I see folks joining now. I am going to get started with a brief introduction, and then we will get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon about understanding top human resources misconceptions and how to mitigate them to really create trust within your organization. My name is Christina Djordjevic, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at All Voices. For folks who aren't familiar, All Voices is an employee intelligence platform to systemically ask for, accept, and analyze and act on all kinds of feedback. We know that you'll find great ideas and bad habits in real time, reducing turnover and recruiting costs. Today, we want to discuss tangible ways to really build trust because these misconceptions around human resources or people teams really exist from the employee perspective for many reasons, rooted in historical, societal, and really experiential context. Some misconceptions around HR include being reactive, the principal's office, and not a strategic partner to the business. And we really want to discuss how to build trust internally. And we know this is better for literally everyone's experience at an organization. One Gallup study shows that companies with higher levels of trust outperform companies with low levels of trust almost by 200%. And according to Edelman Trust Barometer, 1 in 3 employees don't trust their employer right now. With that, I'm going to pass to our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. If you can include your name, pronouns, and a little bit about the work you do, that would be great. We can round robin. I'll pass to Carla first, and then I'll put kind of the order in the chat there.
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. I'm Carla Patton. She, her are my pronouns. I am currently a director of HR with RAPP Worldwide. I support 3 out of their 5 US locations. In addition to that, I also own my own business called The Career Salon, where I also do a podcast with my twin sister, who is also in HR, the Career Salon podcast with the HR twins. So happy to be here with all of you and the other panelists.
Robin, if you want to go next.
Let's try that again. Hi, I'm Robin. And yes, that's really my name. It's my husband's fault, not my parents. My pronouns are she, her, and I am currently the Director of Human Resources for the Primary Care Development Corporation. We give financial and technical assistance to small community health organizations. And I'm also board treasurer for Lutheran Social Services of New York.
Hi, my name is Jelena Djordjevic, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the VP of People at Thumbtack. It's a home care platform and marketplace, and we're about a 1,000-person organization and about an 80-person people team, and we cover things like recruiting, HR business partners, D&I, people analytics, employee experience, organizational development, HR ops and systems. So we've got the full gamut here. I'm very excited to be here with all of you.
And last but not least, hi everyone, my name is Mahony. I'm a managing partner at Daggerwing, and we are a change consulting firm. So I'm not directly in HR, but work with our clients on HR issues, all of the above that have already been mentioned by my co-panelists today. And my pronouns are she, her, and really happy to be here and have the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. For our audience members, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat or use the Q&A function. We will do our best to answer the burning questions that you have about HR misconceptions. I want to start off by taking the time to acknowledge the historical context behind human resources dating back to the early 1900s when it was called personal administration, and it was really focused on hiring, evaluation, training, compensation, and just general staffing. And now terms and kind of the roles have evolved to people operations, people design, other language. But we would be remiss if we didn't start off by talking about people's lived experiences and that misconceptions really are present for a reason. The first question is, why do you believe there are so many misconceptions around HR people teams? Anyone can answer, but Carla, I'll start out with you first.
Oh, thanks. The reason why I think there's so many misconceptions is because I think we still have an area to grow in, which is, being more engaging with our workforce. when people don't know you, they make assumptions about you. And that's whether you're at work or in your personal life. So I think people have misconceptions of what HR does. And we do a lot of behind closed door meetings, rightly so, for certain things. And so sometimes when we don't have that engagement with employees or our workforce, they only see the action items out of that closed door meeting. And so they get the sense that we are only there for several reasons, like, like you said before, we're the police, we're the principal's office, we're the ones that make the conflict calls and bring you into the office. So we have all those things and we have nothing to fill in the gaps in between those things. And so I think that's a miss there for, HR organizations. And it's just something that we have to work towards resolving to resolve those misconceptions.
I'll chime in and say that I think one of the major reasons we have misconceptions is that HR, well, if somebody's paying attention and notices there's an HR department, you're probably doing something wrong. They should, like IT, everything should be a smooth sailing and no one should notice. But honestly, there's a misconception about how we partner or should be partner or our perceived partnership with the rest of the departments. We are a support department, that's absolutely true, but we should be a partner. We should be someone that people go to ask questions, not someone that is run away from because HR is entered the room. And the other, I think, misconception is that everybody believes that anyone can be a people person. If you're a people person, you can do HR. And there's plenty of details. I mean, it has 7 disciplines, maybe even more, within it as a profession. And, people need to understand that you need to know a lot about it. You need to understand benefits and compensation and training. And you walk into a small or a large organization and they all think you know the answer to every question. For the record, I like to think I do, but I don't. And I am very much aware that I do not. I'll give somebody else the floor.
I think one of the a nature of a misconception is the notion that I think that people teams or HR teams are really supposed to be doing something kind of in the background or in the back end and not really being embedded in the business. And I think the HR business partner function that has really flourished over the last decade, I think has been kind of a tip of the spear in terms of showing the power of people teams and HR teams in terms of driving business outcomes. And so I think that's kind of the core misperception is that people teams aren't really embedded in the business and aren't driving direct business results. And I think it comes from the engagement models and kind of operating models that we as people leaders choose to implement within our teams. And so I think there's a real opportunity to encourage really deep embedding in the business to make sure that the business leaders understand the importance of being really thoughtful about your people strategy, your talent and org strategy, and managing that talent really effectively.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of dig in there too to talk about human resources and people teams really being strategic partners to the business, especially over the last few years, as we're talking to a lot of people teams. They're saying executives and employees are coming to them to fix and help them solve anything and everything. So one of the misconceptions we want to talk about is HR teams are not organizational leaders and not strategic leaders. Jelena, can you start off by talking about how you really think about this at Thumbtack and kind of different examples of how you are and this manifests at the organization too?
Yeah, absolutely. And to even pull up, I like to talk about how I think about the business and the people as 2 sides of the same coin. Companies that put so much rigor into managing their business performance, their financial performance. There's so many rituals, from board meetings to quarterly business reviews to weekly, metrics meetings. And it's all people that are empowering that business result. It's effective teams, effective leadership, the right talent, hiring. And so it's really hard to divorce business and financial outcomes from people outcomes. And so we think a lot about how do we just view it as 2 sides of the same coin and bring the same level of ritual and rigor to understanding the health of our organization as the health of the business. So I think you have to do that first to have that deep understanding and know your attrition and recruiting and engagement trends, as well as your revenue and your EBITDA trends. And then in terms of setting yourself up as a really strategic partner to the business, I think it starts with the the people team really understanding the business very intimately. What's the strategy? What are the objectives? And then using the tools that they have in order to enable that. And so I'll give you an example from our side. During annual planning, where we're setting our annual financial targets and our headcount plans, the people team is doing kind of simultaneous org analysis of all the headcount plans to make sure that we're structuring our talent strategy really well in terms of, spans and layers and the level assortment. Where do we see gaps? Which teams aren't growing, but they're signing up for really big revenue targets? So these are ways that we can use both kind of our people analytics as well as our HR business partner and OD muscles in order to inform the company's annual and financial plan, and just really insert ourselves in the process to add value in a way that I wouldn't expect a finance professional to, but we also, we wouldn't expect ourselves to build the P&L on their behalf as well. And so it's that partnership and service of the same goals that we really try to orient around.
Yeah, I think those are really good examples too, especially the impact for the financial side of the business. It's people carrying out all of these goals and strategies too, and being plugged in onto what's really happening as well. One of the other misconceptions that was brought up too was that anyone can do HR. Robin, I believe you brought that up as well. Can you talk about how that is not true?
Well, it is true to the extent that I hope all managers are thinking about their direct reports and how they can support them. So yeah, but on the other side, it is a discipline. And one of the ways that you can best support the organization is by really trying to be a strategic partner, which is what, Jelena was saying. It's, you need to understand the business that you're in. Now, I'm primarily in nonprofits. So I need to understand the mission. I need to understand the different disciplines within that mission. I mean, I currently am at an organization that's focused on healthcare. I happen to, just because of life issues and family members who are doctors and nurses, know a lot about healthcare. I'm certainly not an expert, but I take people out to lunch, although that's been weird during the pandemic. It's not actually happened, but I make sure that I schedule meetings and I'm interacting with folks so that they perceive me as someone that can support them, because not just anybody can do this work. Not everybody has the training knowledge, the compensation knowledge, the benefits knowledge, the human relations knowledge that's required. And then on top of that, you need to build an understanding of the different disciplines. I'm not a communications person. And I don't play one on TV. And yes, the pun was intended. But I can speak about marketing. I can speak to the finance director about finance, and maybe not in the way that two finance folks would speak to each other, but I can in fact have an intelligent conversation on it and support, I hope, them on how they're interacting with their staff. So not just anybody can do this work, much like not just anyone can be the head of communications or the head of finance, or for that matter, the head of security. I mean, or the head of facilities. These are all different disciplines and they require some internal knowledge. But yes, you need to be a people person and you need to understand humans, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah, I think definitely, just like any other discipline or department, it's necessary to really invest in the skills if you want to be interested in being a leader in this department too. And I know in terms of misconceptions, there are different kind of roles and kind of thoughts we have from an employee side and also in other senior leader side. So we do have a question around how do we embed ourselves as a partner when upper management treats us as support staff? Speaking from an operator role, would anyone like to answer that question?
I can if nobody else wants to. Michelle, are you going to say?
I defer to you. I had a couple thoughts.
No, you go first.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a hard question, because if your organization doesn't value HR, there's a lot of walls you can bang your head against to try to get there. And it might be really challenging. So I'm not here to give you a silver bullet on that. You might want to be looking at opportunities that do value it, because guess what? The job market has never been better. And guess what? People want HR people because they've never been so more valued. So if your people aren't getting it, there's other places that do. That said, I'm going to, I think what my co-panelists have been talking about with the partnership and the data and all the things that they are doing. I mean, they're like at the upper tier of their profession. I would say, in addition, really understanding what's keeping your business leaders up at night. You know, before the Ukrainian situation came up, the number one issue that CEOs were saying were keeping them up at night all across the world, basically, especially in North America, is this whole great resignation, the new talent war that I've never seen anything like this as intense since the 90s. And I think this is worse. They are wondering how to get the talent that they need to get the work that they need done. We as HR professionals have true expertise that we can bring to that, and true thought leadership that our leaders are begging us to help them with. Employee value proposition, employee experience, culture, the changing role of leadership, being more empathetic and being more human. Guess what? That doesn't come naturally to people. HR has a special role like never before for adding value to that business, and they're the uniquely positioned to do so.
Well said.
There.
I would like to jump in with a brief example to speak to what Michelle is discussing. Many years ago, when I was so much younger than I am now, I was trying to get my voice heard. The nonprofit I was working for was planning to move into a new part of New York City. And I was both excited and horrified. And so what I did is I wasn't on the executive team at that point. I went around and I sat with each one of the members of the executive team and asked and told them what my concerns were. I asked them for what they thought, how we should go about it, got their impact, and then did something that I actually don't recommend anyone else doing. It was probably a little quirky, and in hindsight, probably shouldn't have done. But what I did do was show up at the executive team meeting. And I sat there, and my CEO looked at me and said, she must be here. And when we talked about it later, he thought, she must be here because someone else invited her. The conversation went on, and when it got to the topic that I wanted to talk about, I said, may I add something to the conversation? Now, I don't suggest you should crash your executive team meeting, but I do think there's a lesson in there about building the platform so that when I started saying what my concerns were about this particular issue, all of the other 7 people on that executive team were all completely on my bus. They were ready to go, and they backed me up 100%. I was invited back to every executive team meeting thereafter because I added value. Not because I was the smartest person in the room by any stretch of the imagination, but because I had built that platform for the message I was trying to share with the other members of the team. And they thought, hey, maybe she's somebody we should talk to on a more regular basis about how we should staff these kinds of new programs. So I think that's the message that is really important. And I think it speaks to both what the other ladies have said about being a strategic partner is about understanding the other pieces, but then showing your worth, either by providing statistics and data or by giving that moral support that people need, showing your ideas and doing so in a respectful and effective way.
Yeah. And I think I'd add, it connects to Jess Durbin's question here in terms of how we're able to embed our team into the financial planning headcount process. But I think it's this theme of you have to show your value and earn your seat at the table. And I think what sometimes people teams miss is speaking the business's language in terms of and understanding their incentives. And so that might be something, say if you're in a very financially oriented company, it's speaking through like the financial implications, or an analytically oriented company, it's speaking through data, or at a customer obsessed company, speaking about how our frontline teams are going to deliver the best customer experience, and therefore we need to fund those teams, like whatever the language and the incentives of the organization are. But I really think that you can hack away at this through like having some kind of, kind of swings at delivering value. And then through that, hopefully enough momentum builds up that some of these conversations just become commonplace in terms of what the executive team is talking about, or the board, whatever the right level is. And I think, like, if I reflect on our team over the last few years at Thumbtack, we just sort of like slowly, bit by bit, built up some of these insights or these tools to help the business run more effectively. And now a lot of those things are very commonplace in terms of how we operate as an executive team, not just as a leadership team, and not just as a people leadership team.
Carla, did I see you go off mute for a second? Did you want to add something?
Oh, no, I echo with all the panelists, what they've shared. Me, I personally have my own strategy. I don't look to earn a seat at the table. I just assume that you're hiring me for a reason, and I bring my own folding chair to the table. I don't ask. I think a part of adding value is being proactive and being assertive. Inserting yourself where you have expertise and letting people see that side of you. And so that's always been my strategy. I just assume if you're hiring me, it's a reason. So I bring my own chair. Thanks.
I love that. I think it's really important to be part of those strategic conversations and have a seat at the table. In terms of hiring, Carla's question is for you. There's some misconceptions for leaders who aren't in HR, or maybe other senior leaders too, that HR isn't needed until you have at least 100 employees or X number of employees. What are your thoughts on that?
I think HR is needed when you can't effectively and you can't be qualified, you're not qualified to do what you need to do to move your people strategy forward and your engagement and culture piece forward. I would say, a lot of organizations or people may look at HR as not as serious of a function, but to me, it really is, especially almost having 20 years of experience. I've seen how when you don't have that backup of expertise and experience, how it can be very costly. And to think that we have people that have chosen to come here or to your organization, put in most of their time away from their family, their friends, to work with you and push your mission and vision forward. And we don't give them the respect and value back to say, we value you and we're going to take this serious, and we're going to hire a support function to support you in everything that you do, your career, your progression here, how you feel, being here as an employee within our culture. And I would say, if a person says, oh, I don't need HR, well, I would ask them, would you hire your landscaper to operate on your grandmother? It's that serious to me. I wouldn't, and it comes back to me. I coined this phrase called informed intent. So a leader may have the right intentions, but are your intentions informed enough to make the right decisions for the people that you're leading? I have informed intent as an HR professional. What does that look like? I have the education, I have the experience, I have mentors of other senior leaders that may have more experience than me, all guiding how I move and what I do in HR in my organization. And other people that might not be focused on that people journey may not have all that. So that's what I would say.
I would just add that I can't even follow Carla. I'm not going to pretend to. Everyone's clapping for Carla, but I would just add to what Carla's saying, that at Daggerwing, we have about 100 people. We've got 4 full-time HR professionals on our team, and we could add 4 more and keep them completely busy. I cannot tell you what a partner they are to our business success. We would not be where we are today without them, especially over the last year with everything going on with COVID, with the talent wars, with the murder of George Floyd and the aftermath of that, and becoming a more inclusive company. Like all of those things that they helped us with, we would be lost without them. So even a quote small company with 100 people, 4 full-time people, we could use more.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies will say, like, people are our greatest asset, or some cliche speaking to that. And I think that the proof is in the pudding in two ways. I think one is just the number of resources that you're dedicating to building up your people machine. And so that, that ratio of like 4 out of 100, it's like, that feels like the company, the organization's investing some. The stuff doesn't appear out of thin air in terms of everything that we're building up. And then I think the other is the representation of the people team at the leadership level too. I think that's a really important thing to look for, is on the executive team is people viewed as one of the most important members there. I think both of those are kind of like ways to look at how much does a company value its people, like the full organization, and then empowering the function that is going to be enabling the people success of the company.
I just want to pipe in, forgive me, but I want to comment on that. I've worked at an organization that was many organizations, but at least one that was fairly large, and I had 8 staff under me. So it was a fairly large group. We had, 500-600 employees, but they were always starving HR. I've now come to PCDC, and much to my shock, they gave me 8 major priorities to do over the next 3 years, and then said, now, how much money do you think you're going to need to accomplish it? My head exploded. I mean, literally just exploded off my shoulders. I was like, what? Because they value the fact that they got someone at a high level of experience, and they were asking me to come in. The organization's going to expand and grow. And they said, we want someone at your level, because we want to make sure that we have all the infrastructure in place so that as we grow, we are going to have this available and we're going to do it right. I mean, this is an HR person's dream. I sometimes have to pinch myself to believe it. But the point I'm trying to get at here is going back to that starvation of human resources. Oh, they'll just get by. Well, if you're not investing in your HR department, quite frankly, you're not investing in your people. And if you're not investing in your people, you have unhappy humans. And if you have unhappy humans, you have unhappy clients. I can draw a line that will take you right up or down the pyramid, however you want to look at it, showing that you need to invest in these issues, from doing compensation studies to look at equity, investing in diversity. I mean, it's the same thing. We're talking about diversity when we should be talking about inclusion and belonging and justice, and not how many people of any particular color or ethnic origin or religion. We need to be investing in those individuals so that they feel that they have the opportunity to be successful at the place they're in. And I think Carla speaks so eloquently to it. I mean, we all do, but when she was like, would you ask your gardener to operate on your grandmother? No. I mean, I think that's probably going to be one of my quotes of the day, along with bring your own chair. But I mean, it's so important to invest by actually putting money behind it. You want me to change these things? Absolutely, I can do it. But if you don't give me the funds or the tools or the team to support me, because as one person, I can't do it. I just can't.
Yeah, I want to talk about that investment, not only in your employees as well, and also specifically in your human resources department. We have a question around, as an HR professional, how do you gain the skills, competence, and knowledge to add value to the business without having to go back to school or get a higher degree in human resources? In other words, how do you become an expert or a thought leader? Smiley face emoji. Does anyone want to take that question?
I would go back to that proactiveness and assertiveness. So when you make up in your mind that you're committed to HR or whatever field you're trying to go into, there's certain things that you should do to develop yourself. So I always encourage people that, your growth and development is not in the hands of anybody else but you. So, thankful for technology. We have podcasts, we have Google, we have books, we have mentorship, which is very important to think. And I just got a mentor. I had a mentor earlier in my career, but it was kind of like a SHRM we put you together and map you to someone. Me, I'm the firm believer of trying to get to know someone and have that organic move or transition into a mentorship relationship. And I got a mentor when I was laid off a year ago, and it has completely changed my life. Like, to know that I've been in HR for a long time, but there's still more things I can learn. I don't know it all at all. And for someone to have more experiences than me that can teach me how to elevate what I bring to the table is very valuable. So I would say find a mentor or network so you can get to know other people that you would be interested in, vibe with, that can be a very helpful mentor to you. So there's several different avenues aside from paying to go back to school or getting additional degrees, and joining communities. There's more HR communities out there than I've ever seen in my experience. I'm a part of Black in HR, and I know, that community is open. So if you want to join Black in HR, come on. But, there's different communities that we help encourage each other and teach each other things through those communities. So there's several things that you can become a member of or sink into to elevate yourself as a leader or expert in the field. It's not just education.
I think there's such an opportunity too to both, whether it's kind of a full-time transition or kind of taking on projects, to really spread your wings across HR and the different disciplines. I know Robin mentioned, there's kind of 7 or 8 different disciplines that comprise the entire function. And I know when I've hired leaders, I actually really look for people who have well-rounded experience. Say if you're hiring a compensation and total rewards leader, somebody who spent some time as an HR business partner or a talent management person, because they'll understand what the other implications are of it. So I think of that as an opportunity both to kind of make these lateral internal moves to kind of rotate throughout the function. It's helpful for your professional development, and I think will make you a more attractive candidate down the road, especially as you're in leadership positions. And then I think if that's not an option, another way is to just sort of take on additional side projects. Like, there are always way more projects than there are people at any company, but especially within the people function. And so I think of members of our team who kind of have taken on these additional programs or projects as sort of a side gig, and how much exposure they've gotten from that, whether it's say if you're an HR business partner and you become the liaison to the compensation team or to the HR operations team and help them with something that requires some overlap. So I think there's a lot of ways in kind of bite-sized chunks or through lateral moves to get exposure. And then I think there's another question in terms of how do you build up acumen and literacy about the business more broadly? And I really think it just comes down to time. It is just spending the time with the business, understanding their strategy, inviting business leaders to your organization, like doing lunch and learns. We had at points we've had, our CFO come to the people team or our brand team come to the people team, and just sharing those insights and investing in the time to get out of the ivory tower. Because it's just what it is. It's just spending the time to learn it really well. There's no silver bullet other than that.
In terms of the second part of kind of the title of the webinar too, in terms of building trust with employees, with senior leaders, with the team, we know that trust, just like with any other relationship, doesn't happen overnight, and it's intentionally built. Carla, I think RAPP has over 500 employees spread across different cities and geographies. I want to kind of ask how you have found any patterns and how people engage with multiple avenues for feedback. I don't think 500 people are coming specifically to you. That would be a lot, but what are your thoughts on that, about building trust through feedback?
I don't necessarily have any numbers on how, different groups provide feedback, but what I do know and what I see as a trend in any organization is people go where they feel comfortable. So if you're providing an environment of psychological and cultural safety where people feel like they can come to you and not, get judged or knocked down, or they're going to get the help that they need when they decided to come to you, then they're going to come, period. That's whether you have a website that, accepts complaints, or if you have one person on your HR team that does all the employee relations, or if they go to their manager, just take me for example. I'm in HR, but I'm also an employee, and I have to feel psychologically safe to make my concerns known. Well, yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty honest regardless, but it's better if I feel psychologically safe to come to, and I have concerns now, and things that I bring it up to my manager, chief people officer. I have a one-on-one with the president of RAPP, and I bring up my concerns too. But that because they provide an environment that allows me to feel that comfort. And I think, that's what we should get. We shouldn't necessarily focus on how people bring things to us, but the fact that they feel comfortable bringing anything to us at all is a true testament into the environment and culture that you're trying to build.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Double click on that one. And I think the psychological safety, it's, something we're talking about a lot right now. It's connected very much to this idea of inclusion and belonging as well. And it's really around, I think, a specific unique role HR can play is facilitating that environment and that culture, because that idea of creating that environment is something that the leadership collectively owns in an organization. It is not totally the job. It's not, the HR does not own it, but they can help leaders create that environment. Because HR, we could all talk about it until we're blue in the face, but if our people don't feel safe going to their managers and leaders and talking about tough issues, it's all for naught, and it's just a bunch of talk. So it's such a unique opportunity, for HR to play in that culture. And honestly, we know statistically that part of the Great Resignation is people are leaving because of inclusion issues, belonging issues, because they don't feel psychologically safe, and because of values issues. It's unprecedented. So it's a big business imperative, not just a feel good, nice thing.
Have to take care of your people. It's really, really important. And like Jelena said as well, a lot of folks say our greatest asset is our people. You have to really walk the walk and talk the talk. And psychological safety has multiple sides to it as well. Whether you're with a people team, the HR team, the CEO, and also day one as an employee, you want to feel that level of psychological safety. In terms of inclusion, equity, and diversity, we do have a question around, can you talk about how a diversity, equity, inclusion manager can work closely with human resources to accomplish org-wide goals? Anyone can answer this question. I know different organizations work differently, but any advice would be helpful.
Yeah, I can speak to how we structured our program. So Deanna is our Senior Director of DE&I and has just done this incredible job of spearheading this effort called Leader-Led DE&I. I don't know if folks are familiar with the framework. And so one of the core principles of our program, we have a 3-person D&I team. So it's all about embedding D&I in everything that we do across our people, the pros that we're serving, kind of the actual people in our marketplace, and the product. So we really kind of expand it from the people to the full business in terms of how we think about these principles. But this concept that we've been rolling out, leader-led DE&I, and actually think you can elevate it to leader-led people outcomes, is that it's not the people team, the HR team, the D&I team that are accountable to this. It's leaders. They're responsible for their business kind of units and their orgs. And a key element of that is DE&I. And so they've been partnering with the leaders as well as their other partners on the people team, like HR business partners, analytics, to really kind of analyze, diagnose key areas that we need to invest in and kind of opportunities and challenges that they're seeing. They're helping partner by developing recommended strategies and actions that leaders can take, and then coordinating with their peers and partners on the people team, because the D&I team is going to be responsible for kind of identifying opportunities and then building kind of structural programs as a company. But then, the DPs are responsible for individual coaching with leaders and making sure that we're creating kind of career development plans for kind of high potential talent or whatever it may be. And together they're working with the business leaders to make sure that the leaders feel accountable for this, because the people outcomes ultimately should be owned by the business, not by the HR team.
Everyone should have that good old ownership mentality as well, and really linking it up to each department leader's goals too is also really important, accountability across the organization. Another kind of misconception we hear is around human resources really being reactive, waiting for employees to come to you with problems or senior leaders. And I think this relates to another audience question around what percentage of your HR resources, money, time, energy, et cetera, is devoted to proactively setting your organization up for success versus addressing the issues in front of you, i.e. the Great Resignation? Do you think that ratio will change over time? Again, anyone can answer this question.
I mean, I'll take a stab at it. I think that it depends on the organization you're at. Some organizations, I've worked in criminal justice where I spend a lot of time dealing with issues, with employee relations issues, and being reactionary because that is what the organization's staffing requires. But there's two ways to approach that. You can just stay reactionary and do just what is being thrown in your direction or in HR's direction, or every time something comes at you, you can take a hot minute and say, okay, how can I make this better so the next time this issue is raised, we have some sort of a response. Now, if you are a one-person HR department, it's a little more challenging, and I've been that many times. But if you have a team, then you as the head of HRs, as a CHRO, need to hold your team accountable. And what I mean very specifically about that is by asking them, okay, here are all the problems, and we need to deal with all those problems, and we need to deal with them right now. But my expectation is at least once a quarter, we're going to sit in a room together and we're going to do a deep debrief on what occurred in that quarter and how we might make it less likely to reoccur. Doesn't mean you can stop it, but it does mean that when that thing happens again, you will at least have some idea on how to approach it. And I can't stress this piece enough. After you've done all that, which is great, you gotta document it, because heaven forbid something happens to you as the leader, someone else needs to be there to be able to say, oh, this is what happened in the past and here's how it was approached. Oh, that was a terrible idea. Maybe we should try something else. And that's how you can be cross-functionally collaborative, because you can go out to the different disciplines within your organization and ask them, well, this is what happened. And oh, it was a catastrophe. You know, do you have thoughts on how we might handle it? And they will, it's a building trust issue, right? They will trust you because you ask them for advice. You can trust them because maybe the next time they will come to you and ask you for advice. There's a mutual collaboration there that helps to change the organization. As I always say, change is what happens when you're not paying attention, when you're being transparent and communicative, which speaks to what everyone else on this panel has said. You need to communicate, talk, talk, talk. And if you're not talking, then you're walking right past each other. And forgive me for using sign language there, but it's just collaboration is so critical.
I would say also, you always have to make sure the business understands that being reactive always has a cost. And the cost, money, your bottom line, a cost and loss of resources, all of those things come into play. And so, you know, people need to keep that in mind. And, you know, that's one way that we can continue to show our value is reducing those costs to people's bottom lines and letting the business see, you know, what you can count up the costs from last year and show them like, these are all the ways that we could have prevented all of these costs, the lack of resources and the cost for EEO or having general counsel work on an investigation and all of that. If we would have just took the time to work through our processes and take the time to have a 20-minute meeting with an employee that had an issue, and then 2 months later, it festered into something that was uncontrollable. So we need to make those little investments to save time, money, human beings' mental health, to go through all of those things of the organization being more reactive. Those things are important to people. And I think, in addition to what Michelle said before about people having psychological safety and the Great Resignation, people are also leaving because they just don't have time for this. They don't have time for you to mess up their family life, their work-life balance, their mental health. It's time out. They're tired of going to the doctor. I hear, from several people when they go to therapy and they go to a therapist, half of it is on work stuff. How do I know? I've been there, done that, sat on somebody's couch, and I get to talking about my family, and then half of my sessions are to talk about my boss or or my team, or so I know people are in therapy because organizations are not being proactive, they're being reactive, and it shows up everywhere. So
I think we have to be honest too, but it does come back to staffing, and that in HR, there are naturally reactive things like ER, as a discipline in some ways is like reactive to the core. And so the team can't really be proactive unless if it has the time and space to do that or can manage expectations to the business. Like I think of on our team, for example, the recruiting team and the business team are frustrated with like how certain things that our ability to scale our offer comp process, but the comp team needs the time and space to be able to build it. And so you either have to have the resources or have to feel empowered to say pause. I think recruiting teams face this a lot where the business is like, hit my targets, and the recruiting team is saying like, we've got our own targets. And I've heard of companies that have put like 6 weeks moratoriums on all business hiring so that the recruiting team can go hire for themselves, which I actually think is really good. And so I think that's at the crux of it is how do you get the time and space to be proactive, either through hitting pause or getting the resources that you need to do that and making that case for it. But I totally agree with everybody in saying like, you're going to pay for it down the road. And we need to be able to present that, kind of explain that really eloquently so folks understand it.
Less Zoom meetings would very much help with this issue. People are exhausted. I know we tried to replicate the workplace with Zoom over the last 2 years, and okay, we'll just do it all on video. That's just got to change. It can't work anymore, and reclaim back our time so that we have time to sit and we have time to think.
Nobody likes days where you're back to back on Zoom, and it's not good. Zoom fatigue. We have to be really critical about it and intentional. I know there are a lot of other questions, and we have a couple of minutes left. This webinar can be a whole conference. It could be a whole day. But I want to ask a final question to everyone, kind of round robin style, around what can HR professionals do tomorrow to really build more trust? So this is that individual onus. And then for systemic change, what is a long-term sustainable change you'd like to see in the human resources, people operations industry? We'll go reverse round robin with Michelle first, and then I'll put the kind of order in the chat there. So 2-part question.
Okay, so the first one was about what can we do to regain for trust?
What can an HR professional do tomorrow to really start to build trust or continue to build trust? I'll put it in here as well.
All right, sounds good. So today my mind is on what happened in New York, which many of you might have heard with the subway shooting. We have a team in New York, or part of our team is in New York, and it's that are very upset and may not be able to concentrate on work as a result, and it's very scary. Their kids' schools are being shut down too. I think that as HR professionals, creating the climate where with our leaders, and it's not all on us again, but with our leaders to say, hey, maybe you want to reach out to your team just to see if they're okay. First physical safety, but then to see if they're, if they need a mental health break, encourage them to go out and take a walk, encourage them to talk about things that are going on in the world. And let's stop with this ridiculous separation of things we can talk about at work versus things that we can't talk about at work, because it's all blurred together. This is part of the reason people are going to therapy. We're not therapists and neither are our leaders, but you can help just teach them and make it okay for them to be human and reach out to people as humans when things are going on in the world. And it means so much to people just to hear them say, wow, you see me. There's have there been a lot of examples of that over the last couple of years with a lot of things that have been going on. So that I think builds so much trust and goodwill, even if it's sometimes scary and uncomfortable. So that's my specific.
Awesome. I can go next. Yeah, I think that a really important way to build trust is to really deeply understand the problems of the people that you're partnering with and find quick win ways of solving them for them. And I think that just like it shows you care, it shows that you're resourceful, and they'll come back to you time and time again because they know they can depend on you. And then from that, I think a really strong trusting partnership can ensue. And then to this second question, what is a long-term systemic change that you like to see in the industry? Man, what a big question, Christina. That's a big one. I really think a systemic change that I like to see in the industry is really focused around the relationship between kind of the broader business and the people teams, and really understanding the value that people teams can create and the impact that they have on businesses. And then through that, people teams being kind of supported, equipped, resourced in order to drive change and drive business impact in the exact same way that, you know, we kind of take for granted that engineers do, or that salespeople do, or, you know, you name your quote unquote revenue generating function. I can assure you that we're all generating revenue day in and day out. So I think really kind of seeing that direct impact and that partnership is where I'd love to see some change.
I think it's me this time. So the long-term systemic change I'd like to see is financial investment into the human resources department. And along with that investment of money, I'd like to see an investment of collaboration, because if you want me to build an HRIS system, I promise you I can do it with my eyes closed. But if you want it to be a good one that's useful, I need you to help me do it. And so in order to make it something that is impactful in a positive way and not a negative way on the business, I would very much like people to be participatory and give me feedback when I ask questions in a timely fashion, so that I can make sure that whatever I build is something that could easily be used for years to come. And then something that HR professionals can do to build trust. You know, the old adage of managing by walking around. Well, that's sort of a misnomer, because a lot of people think because they walked around that they're managing. That's not how that works. But I do think talking to your employees, I, at one organization, had 500 employees. And by the time I left there, I knew the names of most of them. I did not know the names of all of them. And many of them were young. And so they were coming through. But bless their hearts, they didn't know they had a little name tag on, so that I looked really smart when I said their names. But I think I'm less likely to remember your name. I'll remember your face, and I'll remember things about you. So if you tell me that your dog is sick, I'm going to take that to my grave, and I'm going to ask you about it every time I see you, or, you know, ask you about your mom, or whatever it is. I will remember those details. But really being seen as a partner means that partnership is two ways. I know about your life. I understand about the things and issues that you have that are preventing you from being successful, and I care about you. And I think that's how you build trust, that empathy, that understanding. And I would love to see more of my colleagues in HR. It's something I've spoken about in the past, just really getting to know their people. You don't have to know everything, and you don't have to know everybody. But if your reputation becomes you're someone they can reach out to, you are going to be in a much better place as an HR leader, and the organization will be in a much better place. Thanks.
Really quickly, I would say, you know, in the short term, to build trust, I would piggyback off of what Robin said, and it's all about being relatable. I don't look at myself as a suit. I look at myself as an employee that does a job. I have a skill set just like everyone else in another department has a skill set. And, you know, people want to talk to people they can relate to. They don't want to talk to people that act like they're better than, because they have the power to do something that they can't. And so just being relatable goes a long way. And for the long-term change that I would like to see in this industry is for us to be more strategic with each other and more standardized. I think some people get whiplashed on what trends we're knocking on. Are we partners, or are we HR people, experienced rock stars, or are we like, what title and like what exactly do you do? So I would like to see more consistency on that across the board in our industry, so people can really tap into what we are doing and what level of service and what services we provide and what expertise we can bring. So you were kind of all over the place now, whatever fits your fancy. If you work in a creative space, you may be an air traffic controller, a HR air, I really don't understand. So I would like to see more of that in our industry.
Yes, so creating the climate where people can feel seen, heard, and understood, not checking our identity and what is happening out in the world at the virtual door or in-person door, deeply understanding the problems and looking for quick wins to help the business, and really valuing human resources, people leaders for strategic pieces of the business, investing time, money, and resources in human in the department as well, and getting to know your people. And be relatable, be more strategic with each other. There is something to be said for you're not in it alone, even if you are a team of one at your organization, really looking for mentors, as Carla was talking about, and people who are in it right now. Carla, Michelle, Robin, Jelena, thank you so much for taking this time this afternoon to share your experiences and insights with us today. Thank you to everyone who tuned into this webinar on demand and live. We hope that it was helpful. We are all on LinkedIn. If you have any questions about All Voices, please feel free to reach out to me, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Stay safe and well. Talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks for doing such a great job hosting, Christina.
Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you for having us.
Tough job. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.